World leaders are now calling on the U.S. and Iran to return to the negotiating table to settle a nuclear deal. This comes as President Trump is heading to the Netherlands today for a NATO summit that will now largely focus on his decision to strike 3 nuclear sites in Iran over the weekend.
Now, President Trump's decision to order strikes in Iran is the latest example of a U.S. president taking on military action without first seeking congressional approval. While his power over American forces isn't absolute, there is most likely little lawmakers will do.
We're going to bring in Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes joining us to kind of talk about this, and lawmakers saying, hey, you needed to check with us first. The president saying, no, I didn't. Other people are like, well, sometimes you have to. What are we talking about here and what the rules really are?
It's a mixed bag, Annie. It's a mixed bag. So we're talking about Article 1, that's Congress has the power to authorize wars. Article 2, that the president is the chief, the chief of our military, and so because Commander-in-Chief, I should say, as brain freeze. But so because those two things are at issue sometimes, you have folks on both sides of the aisle, depending on who is the president, raising the flags for this. But I mean, I just like to walk folks through history. 1942, that's the last time Congress actually issued a war. And so every time since then, any type of military action has been through the president. Korea, that was President Truman. Cambodia, that was President Nixon. Somalia, Haiti, Bosnia, Kosovo, that was President Clinton. All of those were without congressional action. Oftentimes with Cambodia, that was after Congress actually voted to not go to Cambodia. Nixon unilaterally was like, well, thank you, but I'll do it on my own anyway. So oftentimes presidents have had this authority under Article 2 to do this and exercise it. After 9/11, it even amplified, so much so that Congress said that you now have authorization to use all necessary and appropriate force to go after these nations that have come against us. Basically, we're giving you the authority to do it on your own. So I believe that Congress has kind of stepped away and deferred to the president for the last number of years, for decades, I'd say. And so, yes, I think that President Trump would be within his authority to do the action that he did as long as it's not a war.
Is there sort of a blurred area, like a gray area, Khalif, when it comes to, can the president do multiple overseas strikes? It's not considered war, but at what point do we cross the line and it is war?
I think that blurred area, blurred lines, we're talking about Robin Thicke here, that's what it kind of feels like. For really, though, you're talking about the War Powers Resolution Act since 1970 is what most presidents will point to. And the most recent one I could point to is President Obama. That normally gives you 90 days to be able to do some type of action. And then what Obama's folks said during that time was that, well, technically, because we haven't put any troops on the ground, we can do as many attacks as we want via the air. Now, that one was shot down a number of times through congressional leaders saying that, no, you don't have authority to continue to just go there past the 90 days. But, to your question, I think the blurred area is extremely blurry when you're saying, is it a war? Is it presidential action? Typically, it would be something that there is an emergency, that there was an emergency basis, and I'm going to act. What folks on the Democratic side are saying is, hey, this wasn't an emergency. This was planned. This looks more like war, less like emergency. That's why they're saying it should have been something that was given to Congress as opposed to you making a decision to save troops.
Khalif, as we've talked about there, President Trump not the first one to use his power. So is it time that we clean up Article 2 and try to figure out a way where we can more clearly define it? Or is this just much about nothing, where people are complaining about something that's been done over and over again?
I think this is to the second portion. It's much about nothing. While I don't think that the bombing of folks or locations is nothing, but in terms of how we got there, in terms of if the president has the authority to do it or not, President Trump, President Clinton, President Biden, you can go back to every president for the last decade has taken some action. And the Congress, as I mentioned before, has not authorized war since 1942. And we've had troops in other places taking action since then. So I would say that this is a politically driven issue that's amplified and motivated by a president that clearly says, even if I didn't have the authority, I'm going to do it anyway. But I think on this issue, the president does have the authority. Article 2 gives him that power.
All right, Khalif, thank you so much for breaking that down for us.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.